What is up, disc golfers? Today on Iceberg TV, I'm here with First Available Disc Golf. I'll link the channel in the description below. Now, his name is Sam, and Sam has coached baseball for over a decade, so I brought him here on Iceberg TV today to teach me how to throw far. A lot of the skills that you learn in baseball translate into throwing a disc far, specifically backhand. So the goal of today is for Sam to give us his top 3 baseball tips that are going to help us throw a really far backhand. So I'm going to give Sam the floor, and he's going to go through one thing at a time and explain how we can add more distance to our backhand. Take it away, Sam.
Thanks, dude. All right, so when it comes to a baseball swing, it is almost identical to how you would throw a disc golf disc. So growing up, I hit left-handed and I throw right-handed. So for me, the transition was relatively easy coming over to disc golf. All right, so tip number 1 is going to be the time in between when you finish your reach back and you have your plant foot hitting the ground. Tip number 2 is going to be the weight transfer. So that's moving the weight from your back leg going into your front leg. And then tip number 3 is going to tie into tip number 2. And it's going to be how you actually engage your hips and then drive your hips through to generate the power to get the disc moving forward. All right, guys, so tip number 1 is going to be the time in between you finishing your reach back and then your plant. So ideally, when you're running up, you want to be planting at the same time you're finishing your reach back. So there's a lot of things going into that. And in baseball, when we try to teach at least a nice compact swing, what I try to do is I try to teach your plant and separation of your hands. So when your hands move away from your body, should be happening at roughly the same time. So in a baseball swing, if I'm right here, I'm just moving my foot forward, that's the plant in disc golf, and then finishing my reach back would be just that separation. What that allows you to do is it allows you to generate a lot more torque because you're moving everything away from you, so you're getting some more length. That's why you see taller players like Eagle or even Big Germ, they can generate so much power and it looks effortless. And part of that is they have a much longer pull through. So you want to try and maximize that as much as possible. So ideally, when you're doing your run up, I always try to say, work slow and build off of that. Because moving faster doesn't generate you more power. It's harder to time everything. It's harder to get everything together as one compact package. And at least how I approach baseball was the less you have to do, the less you have to think about, the more you can pay attention to what's coming at you. So what I like to do is I like to start my body a little bit squared towards my target. Some people can start straight up. It doesn't really matter. All it matters is you get moving in the correct direction. So my first step, I'm usually working right here, do your crossover, but the entire time when I'm doing that, I'm moving the disc slightly away from me. Or as some people like to talk it, walking around the disc. So you have your point of reference right here, and one thing that you can even do is work off like the edge of your table. So if you grab just the edge of your table and you start walking around the edge of your table, you'll feel that point that you need a reference as you walk through your swing. So as you're walking through this, what I like to do is I like to time my full reach back and my plant and a little bit staggered, but for me, I have everything closed. And part of the reason for that is moving into the next part. So the next step is going to be a slight weight shift. So if you look at it from this direction, when you're working through a swing, in baseball at least, if you're right here, I have my plant, I have some separation in my hands, and the next thing I'm going to do is my hips are going to move slightly forward. And the reason for that is I'm pushing this power from this back leg where all my weight is sitting, I'm moving that forward into this brace leg. So this leg here is going to be bracing that incoming power coming from your left. So you're slightly driving off, and you'll see a slight kind of drift in your hips. You're not opening them. All you're doing is you are drifting them forward to allow yourself some actual drive off that back leg. Because if you're trying to really drive off this back leg and you haven't shifted this weight forward, the problem is you're going to have a lot more friction to work with as you try and push these hips through. And also it tends to leave people jumping forward as they go finish into their throw or swing. So what I like to do is as I'm walking into it, my plant and my reach back are timed pretty much at the same time. I'm drifting slightly forward and I'm really trying to generate some power off this back leg, moving into the hip, being stopped by this brace leg. And that's where we would get into part 3, which is generating power from the hips. A lot of people, especially when they start out, you see the same thing with younger baseball players at T-ball age. They try to either get a lot of rotation to swing the bat because they're not strong enough to really maneuver it, or they just swing with a lot of arm. There is no lower body engagement. Similar thing with disc golf. You see a lot of people when they start out, they'll generally curl it up and they'll try and just fling it out with their arm. The lower body is ignored completely. And when you look at people who throw very far versus people who don't, the number one thing you're going to notice is there is much more activation and things going on in the lower body than there are really anywhere else. I mean, the top half, the way I like to describe it whenever I was coaching a swing, was you're just throwing the knob at the ball. That is all the top half needs to do. So there's very little thought going into your swing from the top half. Everything I tried to coach was from here down, because that's where all of your power is going to come from. That's where a lot of your timing is going to come from. And that's really how you're going to be able to see results. So one thing that I heard a lot growing up was squish the bug. And the idea behind that is, as you're trying to generate that power from the bottom half, the easiest way to explain it to, let's just say, a 5-year-old trying to learn how to swing a baseball bat is there's a bug underneath your back foot. You're squishing that bug into the ground. And you see what happens is that allows my hips to now move open, and then I can actually generate that power from those hips. The more you can get those hips engaged, and the more you can, I guess, work in conjunction with each other, the back leg and the hips, the easier you're going to have the distance just coming to you. So when I like to work through a swing, again, you get through, your plant is roughly about the same time as your reach back, and then you have that back leg that's a little bit more loaded up than the front. I'm bracing everything into this front leg. I'm doing that slight weight shift as I'm just starting to get to the pull through. My arm is straightening out, and then I'm squishing the bug, and you're gonna see what happens automatically. Your arm will start to coil in. And that's really where you're gonna generate most of that power. Just like how you throw the knob at the baseball, you're not really thinking about, I mean, maybe your angles, but aside from that, you're not thinking about trying to really push that arm through the zone. The arm should be a secondary aspect to what your lower half is doing. So I always try to teach, put the emphasis on the lower half, really learn how to engage your hips by squishing the bug, moving that weight forward a little bit, and really swinging those hips forward. So once you can swing those hips forward, everything else is just gonna flow through nice and easy.
All right, guys, so now that I've gotten those tips from Sam, I'm notorious for not using my hips very well in my backhand. And a lot of you that follow the channel know that I consider myself to have an elite forehand, and I get really great forehand distance and really simple forehand distance, but I do not have that same sort of confidence in my backhand, and my backhand is going 75 feet less than my forehand, and that's the reason why I wanted to bring Sam into the channel and onto Iceberg TV, because this is something that I need to work on. So I have 5 discs here, and I'm going to do 5 throws. And if I'm doing anything drastically wrong, then Sam's gonna try and help me correct it. And then this is something that I'll be working on beyond this video as well.
One thing you are doing is, when you get to the plant, you're almost like lingering. Like, you want to get there, you're starting to drift forward, but you're not just getting there. So when you are working through your swing, keep your pacing the exact same. Okay. But when you get to that plant, get there. Don't hesitate with it, don't drift into it, get there.
Okay. A little better?
Yeah. Yeah, no, you got to the plant right away. That was a nice one. Okay. The difference between the two was night and day.
Yeah, okay. Just gotta get there quicker. That one felt worse.
A little bit. So on that one, the one thing I noticed is, as you were trying to shift forward, you had a lot of weight on the back leg, which when you have too much weight on the back leg and you're not bringing some of that shifting forward into the brace, you tend to go up. Most people do. So you roll onto your back foot. So in baseball, what you see a lot of is if you're to here and you can't really get that shift in. So if I don't shift at all and I'm trying to swing, my natural movement is not necessarily turn on its back hip, it's come up along with it. So you see, I'm not getting it forward in, I'm going up and in.
Which is what I just did right there.
Yes.
That makes sense. Try to not go up.
No, that was better. Another way to do this is, even if you just go at home, I mean, for the people watching, if you go at home and you watch, your shoulders should be relatively level. I mean, your sight picture should be relatively level. If you notice it as you're moving into something, and as you're working through, your sight picture is shifting, you have a problem. Like, you need to adjust that, because everything should be level moving into it. You're trying to stay on that one plane. So yeah, it's getting better though.
Yeah, okay. Now that makes sense. That's good advice. That felt a lot better.
Yeah, it was smooth. That's one of those things where everything worked together.
Yeah, that felt a lot better. All right, last one. All right. I feel like I'm driving the disc more forward.
You can hear like just when the first 10 feet, when a disc leaves your hand, you can hear that whoosh. There's a significant difference in sound. Just from the ones that when you were drifting up to that last one there, the sound is different. I mean, everything about it was different.
All right, guys, so that's gonna be the end of today's video. This is gonna be something that I'm gonna continue to work on. My biggest takeaway that is going to help me the most, Sam picked it out almost immediately. I'm basically driving upwards off of my back leg instead of in the direction in which I'm actually trying to throw the disc. If you're pushing upward off that back leg, you're gonna cause all sorts of problems. You're gonna throw the disc up, you're gonna mess up your timing. So that's one of the biggest things that I'm gonna work on, is just using this back leg to drive through and press forward as opposed to upward. And then I think everything else will fall into place, but I definitely need to continue practicing engaging my hips. And I think those are 3 really great tips from Sam. So go follow his channel. First available disc golf. First available. One of the 2. I'll link it in the description below. You're watching Iceberg TV. Take care.